Reporting live from Hypersclub for Plus News, I'm John Abba. Breaking news coming out of Mississippi. Key information connected to the case of Nolan Wells.
The official record says no one has drowned on Horn Island in 6 years. The official statement from the Jackson County Sheriff's Department says Nolan Wells died from an accidental drowning. The problem is one of these things cannot be true. When 19-year-old Nolan Wells vanished on July 4th, his family was told he drowned. But as the evidence began to surface, a different picture started to emerge, one that the authorities seemed determined to ignore. This is not just about a tragic accident. This is about a cover-up, a conspiracy of silence, and a family demanding answers the system refuses to provide. Before we go deeper into what the evidence actually shows, make sure you're subscribed to Crime Nest Media, because we don't just cover the story, we follow the facts. The case of Nolan Wells is a mystery that has divided a community and sparked outrage across social media. A young man, a former football player, disappears on a busy holiday weekend from an island that is supposedly a death trap. But when investigators dig deeper, the official narrative begins to unravel. Because Horn Island, according to the Jackson County Coroner's Office,
has now broken online and is adding to ongoing speculation. In an exclusive finding from People magazine, it has now been revealed by a Jackson County official that Horn Island has not seen any official drownings in the past 6 years, according to the coroner's office. In the People magazine exclusive, it goes on to read, despite the current and deep water around Horn Island echoed in the concerns of some locals, data obtained by People indicates that recent drownings there are rare. The Jackson County coroner said that there have been no recorded drowning deaths at Horn Island in the last 6 years. An official tells People in response to an open records request.
Has not recorded a single drowning in the past 6 years.
So if there has been no drownings on Horn Island in 6 years, what are the chances that Nolan just so happened to experience this unfortunate and, from the gathered information, rare incident? In that same exclusive, it will go on to share that drownings have occurred on nearby islands, but again,
not one. So how did Nolan Wells become the exception? How does a young, athletic man who knew how to swim drown in waist, deep water with hundreds of people around and no one sees a thing? Visual anchored. Picture a crowded beach on the 4th of July. Families with small children, boats anchored in the shallows, music playing, laughter echoing across the water. Now picture a young man in that scene. He's talking to friends. He's smiling. He's in waist, deep water. And then he's gone. No splash, no scream, no struggle, just silence. That is the image that defies logic. That is the moment that the official story cannot explain. The timeline is critical. Nolan Wells was last seen alive on July 4th, 2024. A retired law enforcement officer was on the island that day and posted about it on TikTok. He confirmed seeing Nolan around noon or 100 p.m. He described Nolan as appearing completely fine, not impaired, not distressed. He was with a group of young women, chatting, socializing, enjoying the day. The officer also noted that the water was waist, deep where everyone was standing.
A potential part of the island being known for rip currents. But viewing where many were positioned in the water that day, it's been hard for some to believe that Wells could drown in water that's waist deep. Now, one user on TikTok, and who is also a retired officer, would be on Horn Island on July 4th.
He even took pictures to prove it. This is the exact location where the official story says Nolan drowned. A retired federal investigator with years of experience.
Were taken. He was with a group of white girls who appeared to be around his age. The only reason I remember is my wife said he was one of the former Ocean Springs football players. He did not seem to be impaired by any means. This was also 12 or 1-ish. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary. Nobody brings their phones off the boats. I did because I wanted to take some pics.
He said nothing seemed out of the ordinary. He also made a crucial point. Nobody brings their phones off the boats. Nolan's phone was found on the boat, not on him.
Leaving your phone on the boat is common practice at the island. No docks there, so you have to wade to the beach. Every boater, when time permitted, washes their boat and flushes it, especially when leaving salt water, as soon as they get home. His Snapchat would not be used if he didn't have his phone. His mother said he would not leave his friends. We saw with our own eyes he was not with his friends.
This is important because later, someone questioned why Nolan's Snapchat wasn't active if he had his phone. But Nolan didn't have his phone. His mother insisted Nolan would never abandon his friends, but eyewitnesses contradicted that. They said Nolan was not with his usual group that day. He was with other people. He was interested in one of the girls. He was alive. He was fine. and then he was not. The official response came quickly. The sheriff's department ruled it an accidental drowning.
For some, this is extremely interesting given that many have suspected foul play was involved, and that the sheriff's department originally suspected Wells' death to be an accidental drowning, which would anger many since an official autopsy was not completed when that statement was made.
And they did this without waiting for an official autopsy. The autopsy would come later. 2 of them, in fact. But the statement was already out there, shaping the narrative. The family knew something was wrong, and the family began to ask the questions that no one else would. Moral refrain: the official record says no one drowned here. But Nolan Wells is dead. They have to explain that. Enter Dwayne Dio Hughley, a commentator who has been covering this case.
By his tragic loss. Now over on Instagram, on Thursday, Dio Hughley would further push against claims that Wells drowned, as he would go on to share a video of a woman taking the stance against those who continue saying that Wells lost his life in an accidental drowning. For his caption, Hughley would go on to say, all this.
He was on an island that was very populated with a lot of people.
He shared a video of a woman making a powerful statement. She asked the simplest, most devastating question that the authorities have refused to answer.
Let's just talk fundamentals of basic common sense, okay? If he drowned, at what point did he drown? And did no one see him drowning? And if he did drown, how and why did he drown? Do we think that he was just like out there and he fell in the water himself and just suddenly couldn't swim and drowned?
If he drowned, at what point did he drown? And did no one see him drowning? She pointed out the fundamental flaw in the official story. How does a person drown in waste, deep water on a crowded beach without anyone seeing it? How does a young man who played football and attended pool parties?
I'm asking. Because if you're so convinced that he drowned, how did he drown? I get that drownings happen. How did he drown alone, where no one saw him drowning? Because no one's reported him drowning, or seeing him drown, or even seeing him struggle. And I want to say he has to be a good swimmer because they did mention a pool party too that he attended. So I don't think that he would like go on a boat and go to a pool party if he could.
Someone who clearly knew how to swim just disappear under the water without a sound. She went on to say that he would have to be a good swimmer because he had been at a pool party just days before. So if he couldn't swim, why was he going to pool parties? If he could swim, how did he drown in waist, deep water? Ticking clock moment. How many times does a man have to almost die before the system finally takes action? In Nolan's case, he didn't get that chance. He was declared dead by drowning before the body was even cold. Some have pushed back against the conspiracy theories.
I can tell you for a fact, Nolan is not the first person to pass away, or even the first person to pass away on the 4th of July. Been several people who have passed away from accidental drowning off of Horn and Ship Island. The majority of the time, it's from people having some liquid courage, jumping off a boat into the water and it being too shallow, or falling off and hitting their head, becoming unconscious. One person, I think it was a 17-year-old, fell off, hit his head, became unconscious, and his friends were right there. Tried to find him, couldn't find him. Didn't find him, I don't think, till the next day. Similar to Nolan. Drowning is silent.
One commenter stated that drowning is silent.
Children. If something nefarious happened, it wasn't on the beach. Boats were parked too deep on the island. It would be easy to lose sight of someone behind one of the boats, and the water drops off pretty quickly in some spots. I'm retired law enforcement and worked federal and state investigations. Nothing is off the table. He had 2 autopsies and the toxicology takes a little while. I have faith in the Jackson County Sheriff's Office. Everyone sees Mississippi as this backwoods racist place. It couldn't be further from the truth.
He referenced other incidents where people drowned on the 4th of July on Horn Island and Ship Island. He mentioned a 17-year-old who fell off a boat, hit his head, and went unconscious. His friends were right there, tried to find him, and couldn't. They didn't find him until the next day. He said similar things happened to Nolan. He argued that drownings do happen and that the official story is plausible. The problem with that defense is that it assumes Nolan fell, hit his head, or was impaired. But eyewitnesses say he was in waist, deep water. They say he was fine. They say nothing seemed out of the ordinary. The state has not provided any evidence that Nolan jumped off a boat, hit his head, or had consumed alcohol. The state has not answered the most basic question. Moral refrain: the official record says no one drowned here. But Nolan Wells is dead. They have to explain that. Here is the hard fact. The Jackson County Coroner's Office told People magazine that there were no recorded drowning deaths on Horn Island in the past 6 years. The data suggests that drownings on Horn Island are extremely rare. There have been drownings on nearby islands, but not on Horn Island. This statistical anomaly raises a critical question. What are the chances that the only drowning on this island in half a decade happens to a 19-year-old former football player who was in waist, deep water on a crowded beach? It's a statistical impossibility, a breach of the rules of probability. The only way it makes sense is if something else happened, something that the authorities are not telling the public. Now, to make matters worse, the sheriff's department originally said it was an accidental drowning before an autopsy was completed. That is not standard practice. That is not how investigations are done. In any other case, the death would be treated as suspicious until the evidence proves otherwise. But in the case of Nolan Wells, the official narrative was built on sand. By the time the autopsy was completed, the public had already accepted the drowning story. The damage was already done. Nolan's family held a prayer vigil on what would have been his 19th birthday.
Now, as far as the latest, yesterday would mark Wells's 19th birthday, in which his friends and family would participate in a prayer vigil for the young man who would end up going missing and later be found dead on July 4th. Let's talk about him in the comments below. Upon hearing that,
they gathered to remember a young man whose life was cut short, but they also gathered to demand answers. They are not convinced by the official story. They have seen the evidence. They have heard the witnesses. They know the statistics. And they know that the official story is not consistent with the facts. They are slamming the sheriff's office and the coroner, accusing them of a cover-up, of trying to bury the truth and avoid a real investigation. Moral refrain: the official record says no one drowned here. But Nolan Wells is dead. They have to explain that. The people of Mississippi are divided. Some believe the official story. Others, like the retired officer, are skeptical. He said, "I hope no foul play was involved, but if it was, he needs justice." He also said that the island is a popular destination, a family-friendly environment with numerous small children present. He noted that boats are parked deep, and it would be easy to lose sight of someone behind one of them. The water drops off quickly. So, if Nolan died, it happened quickly. But the question remains, who did it? And why? And why does the sheriff's office seem so determined to write this off as an accident before all the facts are in? The most disturbing detail in this case is not what we know. It is what we don't know. The official record, as provided by the coroner's office in response to an open records request, says there have been 0 drownings on Horn Island in 6 years. But the sheriff's office claims that Nolan Wells died from an accidental drowning. If that is true, then he is the statistical anomaly. He is the 1 in a million case. And the sheriff's office wants us to accept that without question. They expect the family to be satisfied with a closed file. They expect the public to look the other way. Call to research the public record. Specifically, the statement from the Jackson County Coroner's Office provided to People magazine is available for review. The data is clear. No official drownings on Horn Island in 6 years. The report also states that drownings have occurred on nearby islands, but not Horn Island. The family's pushback is gaining momentum. The question remains, why was Nolan's death declared a drowning before the autopsy was complete? Is the sheriff's office covering something up? We are asking you to read the documents, look at the timeline, and ask yourself, why is the system so determined to close this case? The case of Nolan Wells is a tragedy, but it is also a test. It is a test of the system's commitment to the truth. It is a test of whether a grieving family can get answers from a system that seems to have already made up its mind. Nolan's mother knows her son. She knows he wouldn't abandon his friends. She knows he wouldn't drown in waist-deep water. She knows the official story is wrong, and she is not going to stop fighting until the truth comes out. If you found this investigation compelling, make sure you like, share, and subscribe to Crime Nest Media. Hit the notification bell so you never miss another deep dive into the cases that the headlines get wrong. We follow the facts, we follow the evidence, and we never forget the victims.